Do me a favor and give a warm welcome to the panel that's up here right now. They're fantastic. Welcome our moderator, Trish Martinelli, the CEO of the Difference Maker and Executive Director Emerita of the Defense Entrepreneurs Forum. A 21-year U.S. Army military intelligence veteran, Trish has shaped defense innovation across uniformed service and the Pentagon and industry and I have about 14 other ands in there. She is fantastic. She led strategic business development at the DoD level, managed acquisition programs, including Rapid Small Business Awards, and served as a culture facilitator in design thinking and innovation adoption. Trish is also an intelligence officer, alumni of the Office of Naval Intelligence, a certified design thinking expert, and holds a master's in business science from the University of Maryland. With her proven track record, as you can all tell, in fostering agile collaboration and defense innovation, she's the perfect moderator to guide today's discussion on the future of logistics and manufacturing. Trish, the floor is yours.
He left off that I just got my PMP certification because I really wanted to get into programmatics. So
yeah, obviously.
Guys, I'm really happy that we're here, and I realize we're in the tryptophan hour, right? So all of the lunch stuff is hitting right now, and I promise that we are going to keep it moving and keep it going. If you have questions along the way, I am perfectly fine with answering a raised hand as we go, because why wait until the end if you've got something that will help you understand it as we go and add value to the conversation. So one of the things I'm going to prep the panel for is I know that we're going to have a lot of questions at the end of this. Likely not everyone who wants to talk to you will be able to talk to you. So as you kind of round out your introduction today, please, the final thing that you do is let people know how to get in touch with you if they don't have an opportunity to speak with you here. So let me do some introductions from my right, your left, across the table. First of all, I'd like to introduce Ms. Kylie Gaskins. She is the Deputy Director of EFFECT, which stands for Enabling Future Capabilities and Transition. Did I get it right? Sure. Okay, great. She is in the Industrial Base Policy Office in the Undersecretary, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Industrial Base Policy within Acquisition and Sustainment. And learned on background that she has been in industry. She's been at the State Department and is newly in part of our family at the Defense Department. So I've given you a brief introduction. Kylie, you want to finish rounding out your introduction?
Yeah, sure. So I lead a new division within the industrial base policy that does studies on the defense industrial base. And our focus is looking at how the defense industrial base is enabled or ready to adopt emerging tech as it's deployed. And our technical focus areas are AI, quantum, and autonomous systems.
Great, thank you. Thanks for coming tonight. Next, a twofer, and as you can see from the little red jacket, green guy in the front, and the lovely Aniza, Butler in the middle, a good friend of mine and the CEO of the Rosie Project. It is a nonprofit dedicated to bringing military spouses into the IT and cybersecurity space, addressing the specific challenges of military life and military spouses, which is one hat that she wears, which is awesome. And she's also the director of Air Force projects at Red Horse Corporation. So Aniza, welcome. And finish out your introduction.
Yeah, so I actually came up through the software factories at Hill Air Force Base, working F-16, F-22, and then moved through my career trying to make as big of an impact on the DoD from the outside in. And that's kind of where I reside now. So that's it.
Fantastic. And how can people get a hold of you afterwards if they don't have a chance to talk to you?
LinkedIn. I'm a LinkedIn banshee. I will give you my little QR code.
And I'll back up. Kylie, how can they get in touch with you if they don't have an opportunity to speak with you today?
LinkedIn also.
Okay, great. Excellent. The next esteemed, and I feel like that's an underestimation, guest is Bonnie Evangelista, and I said her name correctly this time? Yes, after many years of saying it incorrectly. She is a master strategist for rapid acquisition, prototyping, and OTAs. And if you were in the audience yesterday when I said she would come for me if I didn't talk about prototyping, here she is in person herself to speak about prototyping. And Bonnie, finish up your introduction and how we can get a hold of you.
Thank you. I'm going on 17 years in the government now. I've supported both federal, civilian, and DoD agencies, so I have a little bit of breadth in how things work in government. Even though I've made a name for myself doing some of the rapid acquisition, the innovation space, and things like that, I still deeply understand how the regular or the FAR rules, like whatever you want to call it, the traditional rules work. I'm currently supporting the revolutionary FAR overhaul, if you've ever heard of that. So this is the executive order that said we're going to completely do a makeover of the FAR. So just to give you some color, like I've seen it all. How about that? I'll end with that.
Right. And how can people reach you if they don't have a chance to talk to you today?
LinkedIn or Signal.
Okay.
So yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And Bonnie is famous for a slogan that says, don't
FAR on my OTA.
Don't FAR on my OTA. And if she doesn't have it tattooed, I'm pretty sure she has a bumper sticker. So that, along with an anti-bureaucracy bureaucrat club, those are her her taglines. So, oh, poor Will, the only thorn among the roses. You guys, this is Will Williams. He is an amazing, amazing defense strategist, one of the smartest people for getting small businesses into the Department of Defense, and doing that specifically via the Mentor-Protégé program, or MPP. So if you're sitting in the audience and you're in uniform and you've worked with some larger companies or primes, and then you meet an emerging technology that's kind of in the same sector, and you're like, man, I really want to buy your stuff, but there's no contract, no vehicle, MPP and the wisdom that Mr. Williams will share with us today is something that I'd really like you to keep in mind. And Will, don't forget to tell people how they can get in touch with you if they don't have a chance to talk with you today.
Sure. Okay. Well, just like everyone else, LinkedIn is preferable. Signal app is also available. Or I can give you my email address as well. Is Will Army Whiskey India Lima Whiskey Mary Sierra 2015 at gmail.com.
Excellent.
So you can reach me there.
Thanks.
And did I say that we actually came up with a pact that says that if we catch anyone sleeping, we're going to make you do 20 jumping jacks and 10 push-ups. So
it's the Army in us. We can't help ourselves. Yeah.
We're gonna hold you.
I'll do them with you.
Outstanding. I'm kind of actually arranging my questions alphabetically. So Aniza, I'm going to kick off with you. So first of all, I'd like you to talk a little bit about the Rosie project, kind of how you envisioned it, and it's designed to work around the roadblocks that military spouses face. So maybe talk a little bit about that and how that got established as a nonprofit.
Yeah. So when I was in the software factories, I continued to see an issue with our IT specialists leaving and us not having enough IT specialists. And then as I continued to work there, I started to see that our military spouses weren't being utilized appropriately. They were coming into the Family Readiness Center asking, what kind of jobs you have, and being told, well, you can go bag groceries at the BX. So I was like, that's pretty shitty. So I wasn't a military spouse at the time, but I was in a position where I can make a change. And I don't like to wait for others to make that change. So I created the Rosie Project. I talked to a couple of generals, a ton of military spouses, got their feedback, and then built this company. I put it up online. I secured funding for daycare, laptops, stipends, removing all barriers of entry. And I put it up online.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
We can applaud.
Put it up online, and I was like, I don't know if anybody's going to want to do this. And then our first 3 cohorts completely filled up, and I was like, oh my God, take it down. And then we're in our 6th cohort, and now expanding across the US, and we'll be opening in the UK and in Germany. So as we grow, it's been a badass mission, and military spouses are doing amazing. I think they've always had grit and everything along with that. They just come in with a different perspective, and they really get things done. So
Yeah, and I would say that you don't have to be in uniform to be dedicated to national security.
no, and they're the backbone of our active duty members. I mean, enabling them to move with the active duty member.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had a ton of military spouses go out to Ramstein, Okinawa, and we enable that. So they have a job that they can move with in defense with their active duty member.
Right, and in some of the advances that she's made in the Rosie project, she has used CRADAs and PIAs. And okay, so I know what a PIA is.
Partnership
It's a partner
intermediary agreement.
CRADA?
I got you.
Bonnie, help me out.
Research agreement.
Right, so we'll touch on that as well. So those are creative ways to utilize the nonprofit sector to get after your mission. So we're not a one-trick pony up here for sure. Bonnie, don't fire my OTA. Where did that come from? And tell us a little bit about the prototype authorities that you had, encouraged me to share yesterday.
Sure. The one thing I'll share first to set some context for everyone here, if it hasn't been said yet, I'm going to tell you the truth. Okay? All roads lead to contracts. I think I heard a gentleman in the last panel, he kind of acknowledged it. He said, when you guys are talking about batteries, and he's like, yeah, if we're part of the procurement team, we have a chance to influence. No, you have to be part of that process, or you will not operationalize or do anything. Everything leads to contracts, everything across the entire government. So the DoD is privileged, though, because you guys have awesome authorities. And I say you guys because I didn't start in DoD. I'm a little bit of a unicorn. And I was familiar with other transaction authority because in my civilian agency, I use them too, but for different purposes, not for prototyping. So I knew the principles, and that's how I segued into the department. So when I was introduced to OTAs in 2018, and I think some people in our community, in my community, in the acquisition community, call 2018 the renaissance of OTAs, because it was, I think, a 2017 or 2018 NDAA that actually authorized the follow-on production procedures that some of you may or may not be familiar with. But essentially that meant if you have a competitive prototype, you can roll right into a production environment to start scaling very quickly. And that authorization happened around that era. And when I first came in, I was with the Army, and they said, we want you to do OTAs. And I was like, great, because I hate the FAR. And I don't like doing traditional contracts, so this was awesome. And they sent me to training to the Army Center of Excellence for OTAs, which was Army Contracting Command, New Jersey. And I came back from that training, and I talked to my branch chief, and I was a little shocked, and I was like, wait, you want me to do this? All they were telling me to do was to create FAR processes in an environment where we didn't have to do that. So those were some of the beginnings of Don't FAR on My OTA. And we had a lot of, anytime we wanted to do something seemingly crazy or odd, and maybe in hindsight it wasn't actually that odd, but it was kind of odd for the government to enter into the arrangements that we wanted to. And there were attorneys or people that, the red tape would kind of just get in the way and would tell us, you can't do that. So even when we had the data points that said we can do it, here's why, there was still a lot of resistance. And somebody on my team, Stephanie Wilson, to this day I still think she is the best contracting officer in the Department of Defense. She just kind of cathartically said, why do people FAR on our OTA? Why? And so that was the genesis of it. And it kind of became the hallmark mantra for not just OTAs, but when the institutional inertia does what it does and it pushes back. And that became our not just our anthem almost, when we would talk about these tools in the toolbox that are maybe underutilized. So to your question, what else is out there? When I asked Trish to make sure people go back to the definition, it's not just the definition, but you can start there. That's what we're talking about. So 10 USC 4022, that's a big tool in the toolbox. If you don't know what it is, go learn about it or ask people and understand what is a prototype. That's what I meant by learn what the definition is, because some people's understanding of what a prototype is may not actually align with the definition, because most people think prototype, they think, oh, we're doing early R&D. We're doing widget building or something. No, that is not what the definition says.
Right.
You can do that, but you can do more. So don't limit yourself. Go read the texts that drive these decisions. I'm also going to share, if you're not if you're I'm not as familiar with the logistics community, but if you're doing I imagine you're doing lots of like operational testing with end users and lower echelon units and whatnot. 10 USC 4023 is your best friend. And if you don't know what that is, that's procurement for experimental purposes. And the biggest like benefit there is no competition is required. It's a very limited but specific authority that says you can go experiment for operational purposes. And it has to align to certain sectors that are in the statute. But like that's a heavily underutilized authority. DOD, in Bonnie's opinion, incorrectly aligns that to other transaction authority. I think it's totally separate, but I'm not going to get into the weeds here. Like just learn about it, go think about it. You mentioned PIAs. There's also TIAs, and like there's way more tools in the toolbox. So if there's anything I can kind of just wrap up, like what are these things that you can do? Just don't always go back to the statutes, always go back to the whys. So I encourage everybody, not just in the acquisition community, but if you're in the end user community or if you're in a functional element supporting an acquisition line, when somebody's telling you no, you got a contracting officer or program manager who's like, I can't do that. Like, I cannot understate the why response. Like, and people like don't love that sometimes. But if somebody cannot explain to you why strategy or acquisition plan X is going to get you to your end objective, like that's a problem to me. And if somebody who knows like and can do what we're offering up here and talk about zigging and zagging because like these authorities allow you to go this way or that way, like that's, I think, where we all want to be.
At lunch today, we have designated Bonnie as the Kool-Aid man busting through the wall.
Oh yeah!
Oh, yeah. So, if you hear us refer to her as Kool-Aid, you'll know why. So, Kylie, we had a chance to talk at lunch, and it was awesome. And you kind of talked about something that I hadn't heard about before, about your studies that you're doing. So if you could maybe just in general talk a little bit about industrial-based policy and how it's kind of attached to small businesses and bringing them in. So start there, and then talk a little bit about your office and the studies that you're doing.
Sure. So in terms of my organization, industrial-based policy, non-traditional companies are, they're centered around everything that we do in terms of considerations for developing policy and our programming. And we've initiated a number of efforts over the past year. One in particular is the Defense Industrial Base Consortium, or the DIBC, which is an OTA or other transaction agreement, which was launched last year.
Great.
So it's a conglomerate of companies, members, where you apply by membership. And the objective of the consortium is to solicit proposals for solutions to supply chain gaps.
Oh, that's
For the
awesome.
defense industrial base.
Yeah.
So it's a really great program. They put out solicitations periodically for key technology areas. So some of the areas are kinetic capabilities, microelectronics, space industrial base, and also critical materials.
Yeah.
So member companies can submit to those solicitations white papers to be considered for funding. And then also what's unique about this program is they also have an opportunity for you to submit on an unsolicited basis.
I like
So even
that.
when there's no solicitation, if you just come up with this amazing idea that you would like to float to industrial-based policy to potentially fund, then you could submit through unsolicited pathways.
Oh, that's amazing.
So it's been a really great program, off to a great start, a number of success stories already. So if you follow industrial-based policies, press releases, you'll see like a lot of the success stories and investments we've made in the U.S. defense industrial base.
Yeah, I think it's a really underutilized resource for small businesses. And Mr. MPP, yeah, you know me. Under industrial-based policy is the Secretary of Defense's Office of Small Business Programs. And one of the strongest pillars of the Office of Small Business Programs for many, many years is the Mentor-Protégé program. So Will, if you can just kind of paint a general picture for MPP for the folks that don't know it, and then maybe talk about where MPP has been and where it is now.
Sounds good. Yeah, so let me just do a quick survey by show of hands. How many people in the audience are familiar with the DOE Mentor-Protégé program? How many people are actual mentors, the current mentors in the DOE? how many people in here are small firms that are seeking a mentor in the DoD Mentor-Protégé program? So
Okay,
guess
introductions
what?
to be
now
made.
You know who
Yeah.
some of the mentors are. Now you know who some of the potential proteges are. So my advice would be, if you are a small firm that's interested in the DoD Mentor-Protégé program and you're looking to have a conversation with a mentor who's already approved, would you raise your hand again? Raise your hand again. So 1, 2, I think I see about 5 mentors
We got
in
over
the
here,
program.
yeah.
So the reason that that's important is that, you know, the program is meant to pair, you know, mentors and proteges up together. It's not often that you hear and get to use the word OG as it relates to a program. I get to say it because actually I was around when the program was first rolled out 30 years ago. I was fortunate enough that after a stint in the military as an Army logistics officer, I did a stint in Saudi Arabia doing Desert Storm. And as a logistics officer, I know about contested logistics because I served on the battlefield. And if you know logistics, you know that they're not trying to kill the guys who are the armor and the field artillery guys, right? They're actually trying to kill you because you are the supply line. And so when you're on the battlefield, it's all about how you mitigate contested logistics, right? And 30 years ago, we didn't have the kind of technology we have now. And so the DoD Mentor-Protégé program was actually designed to sort of help facilitate and sort of close some of that gap. It's the oldest program in existence. I know there's a lot of Mentor-Protégé programs. There's only one DoD Mentor-Protégé program, and it is the only program that provides funding. On average, it varies between $500,000 to $1 million a year in terms of the funding that's available. When the program was first rolled out, it was designed specifically for large firms, right? Because, you know, as a pilot program, you want the program to be successful. So initially, the program was targeted to large businesses, and they were the only ones that could like meet the criteria. $100 million in DoD contracts, you know, subcontracting plans and things of that degree. Most small firms were not able to meet that criteria. So the program was targeted primarily in the early stages to large businesses, the Raytheons, the Lockheed Martins, the Boeings, the Leidos, those guys. One of the changes that has taken place over the past couple of years is that they lowered the barrier from a firm having to have done $100 million in revenue to a firm that has done $25 million in revenue for the previous year. So if you're a small business, if you're sitting in here, if you think you want to become a mentor, and if you meet that $25 million threshold, you might want to consider looking at the program for being a mentor. I started a company after supporting the program. I came out of the program, started my own IT and cybersecurity firm. Obviously, I used the program to build infrastructure, to build capabilities, to implement my DCA accounting system, to get ISO certification, CMMI certification, to put in place my mature business development infrastructure. And if you know anything about growing a company in the federal space, you know it's all about your business development infrastructure and being able to build pipelines and project out for 24, 36 months in the future. So having those mature processes in place, particularly from a business development perspective, are critical to how you fuel your growth. So you're not just spitballing, but you're actually able to determine P-wins and determine what are you going to pursue and how you're going to invest your dollars and B&P and things of that degree. A lot of those expenses that as a small firm, when I was 20 employees, I couldn't afford that.
Right.
The Mentor-Protégé program allowed me to be able to get all of that infrastructure without me having to allocate for it. Because 30 years ago, it was all about getting one contract and then the next contract and the next contract. And that's how you sort of took some of the capital from your contracts to build your infrastructure. Well, the Mentor-Protégé program is sort of like an accelerated way of doing that without you having to pay for it out of your own budget, because quite frankly, unless you are venture capital backed, you just don't have that kind of capital to do that.
And Will, if you had to put a value on the network that you developed through the MPP, if you had to put a value on that, what would you say?
Billions of dollars.
Yep.
And relationships like this. I mean, I was talking to a couple of people earlier, and we was talking about how critical it is in this space. Is not about the technology. AI is great. Autonomy is great, technology is great, but that goes nowhere without the relationship that you build.
Yep.
And fortunately, over 30 years, I learned that you don't burn relationships. You treasure relationships because this is where business is done.
Yep.
It is those relationships that leads to other opportunities. And Mentor-Protégé is no different.
Right.
Really isn't. Build
It's the
those
human
relationships
factor.
now and then let those relationships compound and then have the conversation about, well, can we talk about Mentor-Protégé? And that's what I would suggest, highly suggest. Start those conversations now. If you are a small business interested in Mentor-Protégé, seek out those companies that raise their hand and find out what are they looking for. You know, what is their
100%.
criteria? Do you meet that? Can you have dinner with them this evening? Right?
Yeah.
Don't waste time. Take advantage of while they're here.
Right, and I think it was the FY22 NDAA, might have been 22 or 21, that is also built in reimbursement for the mentor companies as well. So mentors and proteges both.
Right.
So let's say a small company takes 5 days and they go to the corporate headquarters of their mentor and they spend time there. That has a cost for small business that is measurable and tangible. And now the MPP has systems in place to reimburse both mentors and proteges for their time and the work that they do under the Mentor-Protégé program. So I'd like to return to Kylie and ask a question. You get a feel now for the expertise that's up here. So I'm scanning and looking for questions. But Kylie, I'd like to kind of talk a little bit about the resources and the pilot programs and the support initiatives under your portfolio that you'd recommend to non-traditionals. And before she does, Bonnie, if you would just hop in with the non-traditional definition.
Yeah. Actually, I have an amazing anecdote that happened today. Somebody sent me a screenshot, and it was a SoftWorks event form. And I think, in event forms, they want to know if you're a large business, small business, and then they also want to know if you were non-traditional or traditional. And when we say that, that's non-traditional defense contractor. That's a very specific term, very specific meaning and definition by statute. And the definition said, you'll appreciate this, have you had a government contract in the last year? That was the definition of, if you had a government, that's all it said, government contract in the last year, you were a traditional contractor. And it said, if you had not had a contract, you were non-traditional. That is not you're right. Who is it? Like, why aren't people reading? This is what I'm saying. Reading, like going back to there's a statutory definition. So the definition of an NDC, non-traditional defense contractor, is by date of issuance of the solicitation, have you had a full CAS covered contract within the last year with the DoD? So this means if you are a business that does only firm fixed price, and you could be a large business. So forget size status. This size status doesn't matter here. It doesn't matter how many employees you make, doesn't matter how much revenue you make. If you have never done a cost contract, you've never had to have CAS coverage modified or full, you are not a traditional defense contractor. You would actually be a non-traditional. So even though you're a large business, you could be in some kind of you could even be a mentor and maybe be a non-traditional defense contractor. That's an example. So the two key things are full CAS coverage over the last year, and it has to be a DoD contract. So maybe you had a CAS covered contract with a civilian agency. Doesn't matter, because that's what the definition says. And then the last caveat I'll say is the definition might change in the next NDAA or two. So you have to keep tabs on this, because people lobby to get this stuff changed, and Congress doles out all kinds of changes. So that's the last thing you just have to keep an eye out for. But the current definition is that full CAS coverage with a DoD contract.
What I love about that is she's drawing you back to the root, right? So
Yes.
don't just believe the contracting officer that says, oh, if I do that, I'll lose my warrant.
No.
Yeah. We could go down some more, but Kylie, back to you. So under your portfolio, what would you recommend for the non-traditionals and newcomer companies looking to build a DoD partnership?
I would point to, in terms of tech ecosystem collaboration, I would point to the Small Business Innovation Research, or SBIR, or Small Business Tech Transfer Research. And these are opportunities for non-traditional companies to enter the defense ecosystem in a low-stakes type environment and conduct research for DoD in critical technology areas. A lot of times these programs are earlier stage in terms of technical development. And in terms of the mechanics of the program and how it works and eligibility requirements, the website has a number of resources and a wealth of information. And the program is longstanding within DoD, has a very proven track record. And on that website, there's a number of success stories where small businesses have come in and taken the SBIR project and advanced it all the way to the point where the technology transfers and is now integrated into DoD defense systems. So I would highlight SBIR as a potential avenue to increase your presence within the defense ecosystem. And then I also want to highlight Apex accelerators.
Yes. Snap,
So-
snap. Yes.
So Trish could actually share some more information on that, but it's just an amazing resource for small businesses to be made privy to solicitations and opportunities to get within the defense ecosystem, and then also provide that guidance and mentorship for those areas that you may not be well developed in.
Yeah. So the Apex Accelerator is 93 nationwide. In every state with the exception of North Carolina. What's up, North Carolina? Yeah, they are amazing. And they are a hub of people both from the defense acquisition community as well as the academic community that's familiar with government contracting. All government contracting, not exclusively the Defense Department. So if you've ever wanted to have the opportunity to sit down in the room with an expert that knows all the secret doors and trap passages around the Pentagon, the Apex Accelerator is the place for you. I will speak frankly and say that not all Apex Accelerators are created equal. Some are much better than others. So if you find yourself with referring to the last panel, if you find yourself with a dead battery Apex Accelerator, you can always reach out to the Office of Small Business Programs within the DoD, and they'll help match you with the expertise that you need. So thanks for that. Aniza, is this little guy here, is that Rosie?
No,
Okay.
this is our little starter.
Okay, but I hear that there's another person coming into your space named
Yes.
Wendy, and can you
Yes.
tell us a little bit about that?
So we're looking at Wendy the welder. So expanding our capability to integrating military spouses, dependents, and active duty transitioning members into trades. So bringing them into that realm of capability, helping out in the Navy. We're looking at launching here and then in California. And that will be our next step. So just slowly growing across the branches and kind of trying to diversify the opportunities for military spouses.
Outstanding. Well, I'd like to kind of come back a little bit to your experience with the Mentor-Protégé program and maybe a broader aperture as to small businesses that are coming into the DoD. Maybe we can set the table in terms of with Mentor-Protégé, what are the successful elements that you see in small businesses that participate in that and get the most out of it? And then maybe you could just broaden the aperture a little bit and say, like, hey, here's my advice to small business. Or I see folks here in uniform, very happy to see them. Like, this is how you best leverage your small business officer or your small business connection.
Sure. Yeah, well, let me actually piggyback off what some of you and Kylie said about the Apex Accelerator, which is very valid because I just finished a project with a company that graduated from the 8A program. They were very successful. They got acquired by a larger firm. But the new CEO of the firm came in and said, hey, I want to stand up a Mentor-Protégé program. How do we do that? So I was brought on board to actually develop the strategy to help a graduated 8A firm become a mentor in the DoD Mentor-Protégé program. And so they became a mentor in February of this year. They're not a large business. They are a graduated 8A firm. There's waivers for 8A firms in particular, but you don't have to be just an 8A. You can be a small business as long as you meet the requirement. And then that firm wanted to do 2 proposals for Mentor-Protégé agreements. So I helped to structure that as well, and we got those submitted in February of this year. And so the way that I like to advise small businesses is that part of the process for getting into the program is that, you determine, a mentor, you do due diligence to figure out who you might want to, approach. You determine what type of agreement. There's a reimbursable agreement, there's a credit agreement. 99% of the agreements in Mentor-Protégé are reimbursable. dollar for dollar. There's very few that's credit agreements. And then the third step, which is, I like to say is the most important step, is what's called a comprehensive needs assessment. And so I like to advise small firms is that instead of pursuing a mentor first, right, or determining the agreement, get with someone and do a comprehensive needs assessment. Why is that important? Well, the needs assessment has got to be done anyway as part of the process for getting into the program. Well, wouldn't it be wise of you as a prospective protege to have already done a comprehensive needs assessment? So
Yes.
that what you can do then is take that comprehensive needs assessment that you have done on your own company, looking at it through the lens of people, process, and technology, doing it transparently. And then once you do that, then you can then overlay that over top of prospective mentors and then determine through your due diligence and your homework which firm actually fits you the best, right? Instead of the other way around, do your homework first. Do your due diligence first. And then once you do that due diligence, then you can shortlist those mentors down to the ones that actually provide the capabilities that you need to fill your gaps. And so, for example, if you are a firm and you lack a top secret facility clearance, but you want to build a pipeline because you've got this fancy technology that you want to sell to the intelligence community. Well, you probably know there's 18 intelligence agencies. Well, you can't sell to the intelligence community if you don't have top secret facility clearance. Well, how do you do that? Well, that's one of the gaps. Put it on your list. If you don't have ISO, you might want to do that. If you don't have CMMI, you might want to do that. If you don't have CMMC, one of the ways you can get that CMMC certification is through the Mentor-Protégé program. If you've got some capabilities that you think that you develop and you've got a customer who's giving you signals, right? I talked about this earlier, the signal that, hey, we're going this direction. We're going to look at this type of AI, this type of technology. I think Kylie has already told you 3 areas that she's looking at. So signals.
Yep.
That's what those are. Those are signals.
Right.
So you might want to talk to Kylie and say, signals, where are you going? What does your roadmap look like in 2026 and 2027? And so if you've got capabilities that that the government might need, but you need to integrate AI into those capabilities, the Mentor-Protégé program is one of those tools that you can use to build those capabilities into existing applications, right? What if you want to build a lab? You need $200,000. You can build that lab through the Mentor-Protégé program. You can, if you want to grow your company and scale your HR plans, you can do that through the Mentor-Protégé program, because as you grow from 20 employees to 50 employees, 100 employees, your infrastructure, your processes, your technology, your people, they must also scale and grow with you. So if you need an AI engineer because you want to integrate AI into your application, you can get that through the Mentor-Protégé program. You can get those resources through the APEX. APEX is nothing other than what used to be called PTAC.
The PTAC, right.
For those old gray heads like us, it started out PTAC, and then it was SBDC, and now it's APEX. The same thing, it's just a different name. But you don't have to be part of the Mentor-Protégé program to tap into the APEX accelerators. I would advise you, as
Absolutely.
Dave said, tap into those resources now. The DoD OSB has what they call Project Spectrum.
Yep.
If you're not familiar
Project
with
Spectrum.
Project Spectrum,
Yes, please underline
look
that.
into Project Spectrum, because Project Spectrum is partially funded by the DoD OSBP to help small businesses overcome the cost barriers for getting CMMC level 1 and level 2.
Yep. At no cost.
Now you, as a protege, you get enhanced CMMC capabilities once you become a protege, but you don't have to wait to become a protege to register on the Project Spectrum website and get access to those CMMC capabilities now while you're potentially considering the Mentor-Protégé program. That's very key because, as you know, CMMC certification is huge.
It is, and it's required as of January for any new contracts. Now, Bonnie, I'm going to come back to you. Will kind of teed it up there with, kind of talking about artificial intelligence and a demand signal. I gave a very pale introduction of the Tradewin Marketplace yesterday, but I would love for you to talk about what the Tradewin Marketplace is, how it was brought together and how it's serving as a model that may enable both the small businesses that are here and our warfighters that need to find new acquisition pathways.
Right. The Tradewin Solutions Marketplace, I have colloquially called it my love letter to the warfighter, because it started with me talking to lower echelon users and just listening. And I'd be like, what's your pain point? Like, what are you struggling with? And even though I had quote unquote, no business talking to them, I had lots of people telling me that. I wanted to hear I never understood exactly why it was so hard to get things into the hands of the warfighter, as
Right.
we hear that platitude a lot, in Bonnie's opinion. So it started with that, and I heard story after story where acquisition professionals would just throw the rule book in their faces when they would just ask for help. And I could not stand that. And so that started the imagination and the creative juices flowing, and we came up with the Tradewin Solutions Marketplace. And the marketplace, I won't get into maybe the nerdy acquisition details of it, but what it did was it solves a lot of problems, but that's this problem that I think inspired it the most, was how can I do a same day contract? Like because I would ask end users, I started my DoD career with doing Army defensive cyber operations. And I remember asking them all the time, like, realistically, how quickly do you really need this? And they kept saying, I need this today. I just need it right now. And I know there's a bunch of strategic or enterprise people out there who will tell you end users shouldn't be telling us what to buy, et cetera. I think sometimes we should just listen to the end user. I'm not saying we have to do that all the time. So I wanted to create a real no kidding channel that did give the end user what they wanted if it fit the appropriate circumstances. And I wasn't going to judge what was appropriate or not appropriate, but I just believed we should actually create and establish a channel and create that play in our playbook. So the marketplace, the novelty or the innovative side on the procurement side, we really wanted to look at the buying practice from an emerging technology standpoint. I was in the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center at the time in the DoD, which later reorganized to now the Chief Digital and AI Office, who I'm still technically administratively aligned to. And our goal, that mission set, was just go fast. Just do AI faster, just cut the red tape, break the rules, do all the things. And so we looked at the rules and we really figured out how do we actually reduce the toil, as one of my colleagues in former Air Force used to say.
Alexis Bonnell, yeah.
That's right, Alexis Bonnell. And we really, really looked at that. And what we came up with was we figured the longest pole in the tent in procurement is source selection, if you know what that term is. It's the how do you decide what to buy? And there's this whole lengthy process. And I'm seeing some head nods, so you know what I'm talking about. It's not fun. It's very tedious, very time consuming, and I understand the foundations behind it. I'm not here to judge it. I'm just saying that was the long pole in the tent. So how can we do better? And the marketplace created what we called a post-competition environment. So how can we create a really easy, I'm going to say user-friendly, not just for the government, but for industry too. So we were looking at this, how can I actually get when you hear people say the dude in their basement or the dude in their garage, how do you actually get them on contract very quickly? So we were thinking from that lens too. And this is marketplace is really well suited for small businesses who are doing emerging technology or cutting edge technology, because we're also not asking for massive proposals or anything. We're asking for 5-minute video pitches. And so if you have something to sell, the marketplace can be, to your point about don't wait to get into a program or something. There are some resources. The marketplace might be a nice environment for you to start actually selling to the government. You don't need, this means if you get into the marketplace, because we have rolling submissions, it's an open call. So every 30 days we're evaluating submissions. And it's a 5-minute video pitch. You can do it on your phone. It doesn't have to be high production. You just have to really succinctly explain how your capability or technology is solving a problem in the DoD. That was our bar. Again, back to the user. How can you make a user's life better today? Tell me how, and tell me how the technology is tied to that, and you will have merit, not best value,
Right.
not lowest price technically, like there's no price here. You will have merit to join the marketplace. And once you're in the marketplace, you have gone through what, I'm going to use some acquisition technical terms, you've gone through a competitive process
Right.
that is recognized by multiple authorities. And now the government, if they see you in the marketplace, they can just buy. And they have multiple methods to do that. So some of the novelty here, one general solicitation that covers multiple acquisition authorities, other transaction authority, commercial solutions opening procedures, and broad agency announcement procedures. So what does that mean? Aniza says, I have a product, I'm going to join the marketplace. She goes through submission, our peer panel evaluates it and says, yes, this tracks against our stated evaluation criteria and the general solicitation. Aniza's in. She starts selling to the government. She's doing what she normally does. She's got her contacts. She's talking to not just the user community to make her product better. She's talking to her buyer community, making sure that the two are tied. There's a difference if you don't know the difference. And that's another, I won't get into that. That's another.
I do want to add to your badassery. So, like, this is like, people hear this and they're like, oh, okay, cool, like rapid acquisition. This is rapid acquisition as a software developer, sitting there wanting tools to advance our capabilities for our warfighters and not being able to get them because we have to go through a year acquisition process. This transformed the way we did business.
Yeah, and so if you're in the marketplace, Will's the government user. He's like, hey, I see Aniza's company, and I think I have a mission need that could address right now. As the user, whoever his contracting element is, has multiple options on how they can contract. They can use that CSO authority and do a FAR-based contract, or not do a FAR-based contract. They can use OTA authority and do a prototype, or maybe he's doing early R&D. He can do an R&D, and he can do a CRADA. He could do a grant. Don't do that. Not grants, but any other kind of R&D instrument. So we covered the entire acquisition lifecycle with one process. And
I would say if you don't see the same kind of fire in your contracting shop that you are seeing here,
you got a problem.
Bring your folks around. You guys, we've got a couple questions that I want to get to, but there's one thing that I wanted to ask before we go. Kylie, can you talk just a little bit about export controls and what we're doing there? And I gave her the worst question. So maybe a little bit about how we're moving that forward and making it easier for companies, or maybe what some of the most important things to think about there.
Sure. I spent about 10 years in the export controls community prior to my current role. So this is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. So hopefully I don't get too wonky. One thing for small businesses to be aware of is that a lot of the technologies related to defense systems and sensitive technology areas are increasingly being subject to export controls. But what a lot of small companies may not be aware of is that if there isn't room in your budget for a trade attorney to assist you, that there are quite a few free services that the government offers to help you get through the export control landscape. So I'll point out a few of those. The first of which is jurisdiction. So one of the key compliance areas in terms of export controls is knowing where your item is controlled, if it's controlled on the State Department list, munitions, ITAR, or whether it's controlled by Department of Commerce on their list for the EAR. So if you're unsure as to whether your item or technology is controlled with state or commerce, then you can actually submit what's called a commodity jurisdiction request to State Department, and you just send them information about your technology, and they review it in interagency coordination with DOD and Commerce and State, and they come up with a single solution, and they give you something formal in writing telling you exactly where your item is controlled to help with your compliance for exports. And then there's also CCATs. So if you know for a fact that your item is controlled by Department of Commerce, but you're not sure where in that big thick book it's actually controlled, you can submit a commodity classification request to the Department of Commerce, and they will come back and tell you exactly where it's controlled. Then there's also advisory opinions. So if you have a particular scenario or item that you're exporting, and you're not quite sure if that export requires a license, you can write both to Commerce and State and ask them, and they will give you a formal response in writing, telling you how to proceed with that transaction. Another resource is the Exporter Resources or Response Team, and that's dedicated personnel both at State and Commerce that are dedicated to answering your questions in terms of exports, and they'll answer any questions you have, anything from how to submit a license application, how to submit a CCATS request, or how to even get registered to be able to export, which is free at Department of Commerce. And then also one compliance issue I wanted to bring up for smaller companies to be mindful of that may not be apparent. When dealing with sensitive technologies, it's important to know that sharing certain information in a conversation is also considered an export to certain people in certain situations. And that's called a deemed export and may require a license. So something to be mindful of. Commerce and State can provide additional guidance for your particular scenario if you're not sure. So as someone who spent a significant amount of time in the export controls community, it's really important to me to see all different kinds and sizes of companies be able to enter the defense ecosystem without being overrun
That's what we're
by
here for.
regulatory
Yeah,
burdens.
100%.
So, I'm always happy to answer straightforward questions.
Microphone. We had one question over here for the microphone runner. The runner for the microphone. Over
furthest point away.
here, gray shirt, big beard. Yes, very, very happy to be here. While we're tap dancing, if you are looking for me, I've got a banner in the display hall that says the difference, and there's a little QR code. You can find me. Okay, tap dancing over. Question ready. Fire away, sir. We've got 5 minutes.
Sounds great. I appreciate it. Ken Coletto with CGI Federal. Quick question I have for members of the panel is great educating the industry in this regards, but where do you find a lot of the gaps in actually executing a lot of OTAs, SIBRs, trade wins, marketplace type of area or instances? Because we run into a lot, as I think you may have alluded, the funding and the technical needs to be together. We've run into a lot where if they are not together, you are going to have one or the other in contention of each other. And how is that type of education being pushed down to like regional contract officers and so forth? What can be done to make that much better and even put something like a nonprofit in front of that as well?
Yeah, so I will say one thing on that and then actually hand it over to the experts. But I would say that you have to demand more from your contracting officers. I'm very close with the folks at the Defense Acquisition University. And when I hear people in this room or people in uniform say, my contracting officer is the toad in the road, I'm like, you don't hang out with the same contracting officers that I do. And I'm a little spicy. If somebody was like, no, I can't do that, I'll lose my warrant. And I would just lean in and say, Bonnie Evangelista said you won't. Yeah. So over to you guys.
I'll start, and then because what you're asking about is felt deeply from some of us up here. I'm going to put myself out there and say this is Bonnie's opinion, right? I don't represent the DoD here. They are not educating. DAU is not doing its job. They have one OT learning director, and that person might have some minimal staff. So there's no way you can pretend that that's going to scale across the department to actually give them the knowledge that they need. So I have opinions about our institutional knowledge centers. And I'm not just picking on DoD. I think the civilian agencies have the same problem with FAI, at Federal Acquisition Institute. So recognizing that, just again, not judging it or trying to make this about DAs not doing their job. What do you do about it? If you're in the government, you have to educate yourself. To Trish's point, there is a network that can teach and advise. I was just telling them at lunch about somebody in a policy shop was telling somebody trying to do a CSO award that they have to do, I'm going to say, some asinine red tape, commercial item determinations and business clearances. These are boring acquisition things, but they're absolutely not necessary for a commercial buy. And someone in policy, is doing the thing. So There's that. That's not a great solution at scale, but on the industry side, you guys are the only ones incentivized to educate the government.
Yeah.
So I always tell industry, you better know the rules better than them. And I think this is what you were advising, Trish. Try to educate your clients. A lot of them will listen, some won't. So you're incentivized, unfortunately, the only ones incentivized right now to
All right, so
help
it's our
this.
last 2 minutes. I'm going to start with Will and work backwards. 30 seconds or less on the last golden nugget that you'd like to share with the audience in terms of small business, getting in and supporting logistics and other DoD needs. Will?
Well, simply as a small business, I would just say, you need to move and move quickly, right? Don't overthink it. We're in an environment where you just don't have time, right? Things are moving at a hyper, speed here. And so you have to sort of, jump right in, figure out what's going on, ride the wave, get information from wherever you can get it from. There's no one source of information. I mean, even after 30 years, I spend almost every day reading something about 2 hours a day and learning something new because it's just happening that quickly. Right. So there's a lot of information that's coming at you all the time. There's no Karens. There's no Karens in government contracting. Yeah. You just got to do it.
I'm gonna double down on my last comment. So in terms of you educating your customers, again, know the rules better than anybody else. If you have a SIBR, know what that means. Know that what the actual policy says. So when you tell your client, hey, I have a SIBR, I'm on a schedule, I'm on the marketplace, you have to tell them what that means. Hey, this means you don't have to compete for me. You don't need a J&A. You have to know those things, in Bonnie's opinion, because the government's just not going to catch up right now because it is moving so fast.
I would say continue to get shit done.
Yes.
Don't slow down. I think when you come into acquisition or an acquisition specialist, contracting officer, you're like, oh crap, I hope you know the things that I know. Go find a better fit. There's not one contracting officer out there. And honestly, non-bar-based world is really booming right now because we need to advance technology faster than our adversaries. So at the end of the day, move quickly. And then when I talk about trade winds, I'm going to continue to stomp this. My company, Red Horse, we have our condition-based maintenance solution on trade winds because it gets to the customer faster. It removes the barrier for the software engineering group or the F-16 squadron. That's the importance. You're demoing to people who could never reach you, and you've just eliminated a massive barrier. Okay, I'm done.
Okay.
Platform One is doing they have their own marketplace. They're doing contracts in 24 hours or less.
Yep.
They're with a technology assist, but that's what she's talking about. Just to foot stomp that. Thanks.
Okay.
So I would say that you are not alone. The government wants to do business with you. We want to see you do well. We want to see you included in the defense industrial base and the ecosystem. So lean into a lot of the free resources and the programs that are available to assist you.
Yep. So my time in the Office of Small Business Programs, as well as extensive time in the defense innovation space. So we talked yesterday about the invisibility cloak. I've seen people that make technology that is as revolutionary as the invisibility cloak. Here's where they falter. If you don't understand the market segmentation within the Department of Defense, do your homework, okay? The invisibility cloak is going to matter to the Marine Corps. It's going to matter much, much less to the Department of Defense educational activity, okay? So DoD money has very specific cultures and applications and utilizations. Do your homework, learn the language, and find trusted advisors. And not all of them are consultants like me. Not all of them are people that you have to pay for. Use your Office of Small Business Programs, and if you don't love the Office of Small Business Programs that you're working with, find another, because there's lots of them, both at the command level, the service level, and the OSD level. We, the Department of Defense, fund this effort in order to remove barriers. If we're not doing our job, make us do it in that regard. And this is a first. I got permission to have one more question asked. If there's any other questions, great, perfect. I got permission and I found a question.
Is this like our version of an encore?
I know.
At a concert?
I'll keep it brief.
Yeah, maybe not an ovation.
You know, I work for a startup that works in aerospace, and I think I phrase this twofold. One, I think the commodities industry for GovCon and acquisitions is miles deep. How do you guys evaluate signal versus noise for industry approaching GovCon specialists? And then second, how do you guys think about IDIQs in this mess and as part of rapid acquisitions?
So I'm going to take the first part and then I'll kick over to the experts for IDIQs. Whenever I work with a company, I look for three important things and they're invaluable. First of all, the technology readiness level or the offering readiness level. Is it appropriate to bring it to the community? The second is your acquisition positioning readiness level. If I made this invisibility cloak and the Department of Defense wants 10,000 tomorrow, are you CMMC compliant? Do you have everything else in order so that you're ready to go on contract? And the third and most important thing is the founder or the owner coachable. Okay, so without that third leg, the stool doesn't work. So I'll kick over to IDIQ.
So IDIQs, I'm trying to figure out where to start here. Everything has pros and cons, but I want to point you to the shift of change that is happening with this administration. If you're not tracking IT consolidation and all of the work where a lot of work to streamline or make things simple again means go buy it at GSA or buy it on pre-established vehicles that GSA runs and manages. So kind of doesn't matter what I think about IDIQs because I think there's going to be less of them in the future. You're going to see more. You might see more of them at GSA. You're going to see less agency-specific IDIQs. DoD again is likely going to be somewhat privileged here because it's the DoD, and DoD is probably going to be like, I don't want GSA doing any of my crap. But that conversation has yet to be seen. So just understand, if you want to do, depending on how wide you want to go government, if you're not on schedule and you do want to go wide, you have to get on a schedule. You have to either be on one of those best-in-class vehicles, which there is some very strong push to make those mandatory source, not a should source, a mandatory source under the new changes. And then everything federal schedule wise will be a should consider. And then you might have seen there's some agency IDIQs that have already canceled their solicitations, First Source, DHS First Source, for example, and SOUP is going to GSA. So just be aware and tracking that. And I'll leave my comments there if anybody else wants to.
Brandon.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for this amazing panel. Thank you so much.